An old couple is at a fair and the old man sees a helicopter ride for $50. The old man asks his wife, "I don't have much time left. Can I take a ride in one of them helicopters?" His wife responds, "Oh well, that's way too expensive." The man running the helicopter rides as a pilot hears their conversation and makes them a deal. "Hey, I'll take you on a ride for free, but you can't make one sound. If you do, then you have to pay $50, says the pilot. The couple climbs in the helicopter. The pilot takes off and does awesome tricks with the helicopter. The couple never made a sound. The pilot lands the helicopter and says, "Wow, impressive. Usually people make so much noise on these rides." The old man says, "Well, I almost made a noise when my wife fell out of the helicopter, but these rides are too expensive." A stunning young woman stood at a crowded bus stop, rocking a tight black leather miniskirt, matching boots, and a jacket. She was turning heads left and right. When the bus pulled up, she stepped forward, but oh. Her skirt was so tight, she couldn't lift her leg onto the first step. Thinking fast, she reached behind her and unzipped her skirt a little for some extra room. She tried again. Still no luck. A bit embarrassed, she unzipped a little more, and still nothing. One more zip, one more fail. Before she could try again, a big Texan behind her scooped her up by the waist and gently placed her on the bus step. Furious, she spun around and snapped, "How dare you touch me? I don't even know you!" The Texan tipped his hat and drawled, "Well, ma'am, normally I'd agree, but after you unzipped my fly 3 times, I figured we were friends." A Scotsman decided to try skiing in Canada for the first time. After an exhilarating day on the slopes, he made his way to the local tavern to unwind. Several rounds of whiskey later, he turned around and froze, staring at a massive, mounted animal head with enormous antlers on the wall. "Barkeep," he slurred, pointing at it. "What in the world is that?" The bartender chuckled and said, "Oh, that's a moose." The Scotsman's eyes went wide as saucers. "Sweet mercy! Then how bloody big are the cats?" A woman keeps nagging her husband to cut the grass, and he finally replies, "What do I look like, a landscaper?" Next, the sink starts dripping, and she asks him, "Honey, can you fix the faucet?" He responds, "What do I look like, a plumber?" A couple of days later, the light bulb goes out, and she asks again, "Honey, can you change the light bulb?" He says, "What am I, an electrician?" Then, a few days later, the husband comes home from work and is shocked to find the lawn has been cut, the faucet fixed, and the light bulb changed. He says, "Honey, what happened here?" She replies, "Well, you know our new next-door neighbor? He came over and fixed everything." The husband asks, "How did you pay him?" The wife says, "He told me I could either bake him a cake or, you know." The husband, relieved, asks, "So, what kind of cake did you bake for him?" And she says, "What do you think I am, Betty Crocker?" A blind man accidentally wanders into a lady's bar and finds his way to a stool. He orders a drink and enjoys the atmosphere for a bit. After a while, he calls out, "Hey, anyone want to hear a blonde joke?" The bar falls silent. Then, in a deep, intimidating voice, the woman next to him says, "Before you tell that joke, you should know 5 things. 1. The bartender is a blonde. 2. The bouncer is a blonde. 3. I'm a 6-foot, 200-pound blonde with a black belt in karate. 4. The woman sitting next to me is a blonde and a professional weightlifter. 5. The lady on your other side is a blonde and a professional wrestler. So, do you still want to tell that joke?" The blind man pauses for a moment, then shakes his head. "Nah," he says. "Not if I'm gonna have to explain it 5 times. After a long day at the office, Ray crawled into bed beside his wife, who was already fast asleep, and quickly drifted off to sleep himself. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in heaven, where St. Peter greeted him with an unsettling remark. "You died in your sleep, Ray." "Wait, I'm dead?" Ray exclaimed, still in shock. "No way. There's too much left for me to do." Please, you have to send me back. St. Peter explained that his only chance to return to Earth was as a chicken. Devastated, Ray begged St. Peter to send him to a farm in his neighborhood. In an instant, he was surrounded by feathers, clucking, and pecking at the ground. A rooster strutted by and looked him over. So, you're the new hen, huh? How's your first day going? Not bad, Ray the hen replied. But I've got this weird feeling like I'm about to explode. The rooster nodded knowingly. You're ovulating. Don't tell me you've never laid an egg before? Never, Ray protested. The rooster shrugged. Just relax and let it happen. It's no big deal. Ray took a deep breath and, sure enough, moments later, an egg appeared. Overcome with emotion, Ray marveled at the experience. Then, caught up in the joy of fatherhood, he laid another egg almost immediately. Just as he was about to lay a third, something suddenly hit him in the back of the head. Ray, wake up! You've had an accident in bed! A blonde and a lawyer are sitting next to each other on a plane. The lawyer asks the blonde if she wants to play a game. All you have to do is ask a question, and if I get it wrong or don't know, I'll give you $5, then I ask you a question, and if you get it wrong you pay me $5. No, she says. I just want to sleep. He keeps asking and she finally gives in when he says he will pay her $500, but she still only has to pay $5. What's the distance from the Earth to the Moon? He asks. She gives him $5. What goes up the hill with 4 legs and comes down with 5? She asks. He pulls out his laptop and searches it, but finds nothing. Then he emails his friends. After an hour, he still hasn't got an answer. He hands her $500. Then he asks her, So what is the answer? She hands him $5. Wait, want to make a difference? For every 1,000 subscribers and likes, I'll donate $100 to a senior in need. Help me help the elderly. Subscribe now. Mrs. Capelli went to visit her son Marco for dinner. Marco shared his apartment with a female roommate named Sophia. During the meal, Mrs. Capelli couldn't help but notice how lovely Sophia was. Observing their interactions throughout the evening, she began to wonder if there might be more between Marco and his roommate than met the eye. Picking up on his mother's curiosity, Marco said, I know what you're thinking, Mom, but I assure you, Sophia and I are just roommates. About a week later, Sophia approached Marco and said, Ever since your mother came over for dinner, I haven't been able to find the silver sugar bowl. Do you think she might have taken it? I highly doubt it, Marco replied, but I'll email her, just to make sure. Marco sat down and wrote, Dear Mom, I'm not saying you did take the sugar bowl, and I'm not saying you did not take it. But the fact remains that it's been missing ever since you visited. Love, Marco. A few days later, Marco received a reply from his mother. Dear Marco, I'm not saying you do share a bed with Sophia, and I'm not saying you do not. But the fact remains that if she were sleeping in her own bed, she would have found the sugar bowl by now. Love, Mom. Linda, a New Yorker vacationing with her family in a picturesque Vermont village, was savoring the charm of a destination known as a favorite retreat for actor Jack Evans and his loved ones. One bright Sunday morning, Linda decided to wake early and enjoy the crisp air with a rejuvenating walk. After a brisk 5-mile trek, she felt she'd earned a little indulgence, a double-scoop chocolate ice cream cone. She hopped in her car and drove to the village center, parking in front of a cozy bakery and ice cream shop. As she stepped inside, her heart did a small flip. Sitting at the counter, sipping coffee and nibbling a pastry, was none other than Jack Evans, his iconic green eyes as magnetic as ever. Linda froze for a second, willing herself to stay calm. Jack offered a friendly nod, and she managed to return a faint smile. Get a hold of yourself, she silently chided. You're a married woman with 3 kids, not a swooning fan. The clerk handed her the much-anticipated double-scoop cone, and with the ice cream in one hand and her change in the other, Linda bolted out of the shop, too shy to risk another glance at Jack. Reaching her car, she fumbled for her keys when something struck her as odd. She had a fistful of change, but where was her ice cream cone? Puzzled, she retraced her steps to the shop, scanning the counter and searching the clerk's hands. The cone was nowhere to be found. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Jack watching her, his face breaking into a radiant, amused smile. "You put it in your purse," he said, his voice rich with humor. Linda's cheeks flushed crimson as she realized he was right, and she just earned herself a story for the ages. A blonde young lady wanted to try out ice fishing. She went out and purchased all the gear she would need and headed to a local spot to try to catch some fish. She went out onto the ice with her gear, and after getting comfy on the stool, she started to cut a circular hole in the ice as she had seen on the internet. As she was cutting, she heard a voice from the heavens speak out, saying, "There are no fish under the ice." The blonde was startled. She stood up and looked around but saw no one. Cautiously, she moved a little further out onto the ice and set up in a different spot. She sipped some hot chocolate from her thermos and then started cutting another hole. Again, the voice called out, seemingly from all around her, "There are no fish under the ice." Now feeling quite scared and starting to get a bit frustrated, she moved all the way to the far end of the ice and laid out all her gear, sat upon her stool and started cutting another hole. Right away, the heavenly voice boomed out, this time louder than ever. "There are no fish under the ice." She jumped off her stool and looked all around her. She shouted to the heavens, "Is that you, Lord?" The voice answered, "No. This is the manager of the ice skating rink. There are no fish under the ice." Yesterday, I was at my local TSC store buying a big bag of food for my loyal livestock guard dog. I was checking out when a woman behind me asked if I had a dog. What did she think? I had an elephant. So, since I'm retired and have plenty of time on my hands, I told her, "No, I don't have a dog. I'm starting the dog diet again." I added that I probably shouldn't, since I ended up in the hospital last time, but hey, I lost 10 pounds before I woke up in intensive care with tubes sticking out of every possible orifice and IVs in both arms. I went on to explain that it's actually a perfect diet. The trick is to fill your pockets with dog food nuggets and just eat 1 or 2 whenever you feel hungry. It's nutritionally complete, so it really works. I was planning to try it again. By this point, pretty much everyone in line was hanging on my every word. Horrified, she asked, "Did you end up in the hospital because the dog food poisoned you?" I said, "No, I stepped off the curb to sniff an Irish setter's rear end, and a car hit me." The guy behind her was laughing so hard I thought he was going to have a heart attack. And now, I'm banned from Tractor Supply. Moral of the story, be careful what you ask retired people. We've got all the time in the world to come up with some wild responses. A family is driving along on holiday when a frog suddenly hops onto the road. The husband, who's behind the wheel, slams on the brakes just in time. Feeling compassionate, he gets out, carefully picks up the frog, and carries it to safety on the side of the road. Grateful, the frog looks up at him and says, "Thank you. As a reward, I'll grant you 1 wish." The man thinks for a moment and says, "Please make my dog win the next big race." The frog nods. "Sure, let me take a look at him." The car door opens, and out limps the dog, on 3 legs, waddling under its own weight, barely managing to move. The frog stares, blinks, takes a deep breath, then says, "Listen, this might be a bit beyond my skill set. Maybe you'd like to wish for something else?" The man shrugs. "All right, then make my wife win the next beauty contest in town." The frog nods. "Fair enough. Let's see her." The wife steps out of the car and walks over. The frog stares again, blinks harder, rubs its tiny green temples. Then, with a sigh, it turns back to the man and says, You mind if I take another look at that dog?" A lawyer and a blonde woman find themselves seated next to each other on a long flight from LA to New York. After takeoff, the lawyer, eager for some entertainment, turns to the blonde and says, "Hey, would you like to play a fun game?" The blonde, exhausted, just wants to sleep. She smiles politely, declines, and turns toward the window to rest. But the lawyer won't give up. "Come on, it's easy and fun. I'll ask you a question, and if you don't know the answer, you pay me $5. Then you ask me a question, and if I don't know the answer, I'll pay you $50. Now that gets the blonde's attention. She figures this is the fastest way to make him leave her alone, so she agrees. The lawyer goes first. "What's the exact distance from Earth to the Moon?" Without saying a word, the blonde reaches into her purse, hands him a $5 bill, and closes her eyes. Now it's her turn. She asks, "What goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4? The lawyer is stumped. He pulls out his laptop, scours the internet, calls up experts, and even emails his colleagues. But after an hour, he finds nothing. Frustrated, he finally wakes the blonde and hands her $50. She takes the money with a smile and turns back to sleep. But the lawyer can't stand not knowing. He nudges her awake again. "Wait, what's the answer?" Without a word, the blonde reaches into her purse, hands him $5, and goes back to sleep.
And before you go, here's the deal. I tell jokes on YouTube, but this is no joke. For every 1,000 subscribers and likes on this video, I will find 50 plus homeless people and donate $100 each to them. Hit subscribe and let's spread laughs and kindness.